6.2 is, I think most everybody here, I believe, is prepared, and this is an exciting night where we're going to consider this Futures Lab and a property purchase. So I would take a motion for purchasing for the acquisition of the Futures Lab, and I don't know that we say the address or not. So Nate.
I move that the board approve the contract to buy and sell real estate commercial between Poudre School District R1 and Oak Ridge Innovation LLC, attached as an exhibit to action item 6.2, and authorize the board president to sign the contract attested by the board secretary.
Second, please. Second. Rob. Okay, and I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Smeisner.
Thank you. Well, we have Scott Nielsen and Scott Elias here to show some slides to guide through the conversation about this action item. It's a milestone for the district. I think for many of us it came a little faster than we expected, and that's a good thing. We're excited about being able to move forward should your vote go as a yes. So I know there's a lot of curiosity from the community, and I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, President Fev, Dr. Smeisner, Board of Education. I think it was just a couple of weeks ago that I was here as part of the long-range plan that I talked about the Futures Lab and some of what we were looking at for the fall of 19, but also in that presentation that we were continuing to look for a permanent location as we'll start the Futures Lab project classes in Fort Collins High School in the fall. We've been looking for a permanent location for 4 or 5 months, and are looking forward to sharing tonight what we have found. We're asking tonight for you to take action. I'll get back to that. I think you heard from Nate exactly what we're asking you to do, but we have been looking at multiple properties across Fort Collins. The one that we engaged in real conversations with was this 4862 Innovation Drive, which is south of the area of Wolf Robotics and Oak Ridge Subdivision. It's near the intersection of Harmony and Timberline. Think just west of the movie theater and west of the railroad tracks there. So it's in that area. The building itself is about 38,000 square feet with a great deal of parking, but also large project areas out back and already multiple garage doors that allow us to move in and out and to do some project lab-based courses that allow us to do some things that we're unable to do in our traditional high schools, or at least initially set up some programming that Dr. Elias will talk about in just a minute. The purchase that we have negotiated is for $6.4 million. I think it's important as we start talking about this kind of purchase that we remind those that are watching that this will not impact the $375 million bond that we initially went out to the voters for. All of those projects will stay completely intact. We also had about $42 million in premium that this purchase also will not tap into. We're looking for the purchase of this building coming out of interest from the money that's been sitting in the bank. And so we believe that certainly this piece will, and a large chunk of the renovation will also be able to come out of the interest that we have accumulated or will accumulate based on the money that's sitting in the bank as we move the projects forward. You heard a little bit ago that what we're asking you to do tonight is approve a contract to buy or sell real estate. This February 26th would be when we ask that, but the reality for us is we have about 90 days to do our due diligence and to be working to make sure there's no issues with that property. That takes us until about the end of May, sometime during May, but really from the end of February to the end of May will be our opportunity as a district to make sure we jump through the hoops, as well as make sure that the building truly meets the needs we believe we have. That'll include some work with the city and other entities, but all of that will be done, we think, during the month of May, or certainly by the end of May. And we would hope to finalize by that late spring date and begin renovations in late spring, early summer, with the idea that we would open it for students no later than the fall of 2020. That would be ideal. Having some programming in even before the fall of 2020 would be even a better hope. So that would be what we'd look at. August of 2020, moving the classes that for the fall of 19 will be housed at Fort Collins High School to this permanent location, as well as increasing classes offered and the formulation of pathways around those offerings. Also, the permanent site would allow us to have more programs, both inside the school day, outside the school day, meeting the needs, we believe, of not just high school students, but there's lots of opportunity for our K-8 students to experience, be exposed to this space, the opportunities that the space will provide. And I look forward to Dr. Elias sharing more details about that.
Thank you, Scott. Mr. Board President, Dr. Smizer, members of the Board of Education. I know many of you have seen this before. I just want
to ask that you introduce yourself also to the board.
Sorry. Thank
please.
you. I'm Scott Elias. I'm the Director of Innovative Learning Environment Design here in the district. I'm the project lead for the Futures Lab. So I'm really excited to share a little more color on the courses in the initial year offerings, as well as the offerings that we hope to be able to put in place in a new facility. Next year, going forward, we have 5 courses that we would like to offer, and again, as Scott mentioned, we'll be offering those on campus at Fort Collins High School. The courses are entrepreneurship, which will be a business incubator for students who have maybe gone through an entrepreneurship class already at their school or have a business idea that they would like to innovate. We have a bench of community mentors who are willing, ready, and able to come in and mentor and coach our students through the process of starting a business, and we hope that our students are able to acquire soft skills through that process, the ability to understand the process of bringing a business online or bringing a product to market. iOS app development, which is something that we are working with through a company called Mobile Makers EDU, and that's through a grant provided by the PSD Foundation to provide training for teachers to teach app development, as well as to purchase hardware for the students who will be taking that class. The third one is unmanned aerial systems. We see this as a first step for students who could potentially follow that pathway all the way up to and including earning their Part 107 commercial drone pilot license. The Advanced Placement Seminar is a unique offering through the College Board, which allows students to dig deep into an area of interest. It is the first of a 2-year sequence. It can be taken on its own a la carte. But what students do during that process is they analyze and synthesize research. They put together a individual and group oral presentation. It's evaluated by a committee, much like a student who is getting a master's degree. And they basically create a digital portfolio, which is evaluated by College Board. So it's an advanced level class, but it really is for students who have an interest that they want to spend some time digging into and doing some research around. And the last one we're really excited about, it's still very much in development, but we have some business community partners who have stepped in with an interest in kind of holding our hand and guiding us through this process. But the idea with the Building Trades course is to provide students an opportunity to learn a spectrum of skills that help throughout the building trades, everything from being able to design maybe a tiny house using something like CAD or Revit, through the process of framing, plumbing, electrical, so they end up with a broad spectrum of different skills. And our hope is that we are going to be able to, through that program, provide students with a core industry certification that indicates that they've gone through that, and from there they could launch then into either deeper study in a trade of their choice, or even look at something like a general contractor's license or those kinds of things. So again, just different opportunities that we think provide a spectrum of opportunities for our kids, from sort of the high-tech computer to sort of the traditional trades route with a modern slant to it. We are hoping next year to be anywhere from 80 to 100 students on campus at Fort Collins High. We're looking to bring in students from all of our high schools, not just our 4 comprehensive, but also our 4 non-traditional high schools as well. And we are working with the transportation team right now to make sure that we are able to provide transportation so that if a student wants to attend a course at the Futures Lab, they have that opportunity regardless of whether or not they can provide their own transportation. Moving forward, if we are fortunate enough to acquire a facility that we can open in 2020, what we would like to do is to be very deliberate and methodical about bringing on board additional pathways for our students. We're basing these pathways on both student interest that we glean from both anecdotal from conversations with students as well as the evidence that we see in their ICAP that they take in their high school, as well as through conversations with our business partners who are not shy at all about telling us the kinds of careers that we should be preparing our students for. So this is not an exhaustive list, it's not a comprehensive list, but these are some of the things that we're brainstorming about being able to expand. An IT pathway that could potentially take several different paths, including some exposure to cybersecurity. The possibility of bringing a culinary arts program into that facility, which would allow us to add hospitality management. So while we do teach culinary arts with Front Range right now at Fossil, the ability to bring it into a new facility and create it from scratch with the idea that we could have kids running a storefront, so doing both the back end and the front end work would be something that's pretty exciting, as well as an advanced manufacturing pathway as well, which is something that's in very high demand in the community right now. We are hoping, 400 is kind of an ambitious number, but we are hoping to be able to get somewhere near that by the time we're in our own facility. And again, to expand thoughtfully every year, we don't want to go too big too quickly. We want to make sure that we're bringing on programs strategically with a focus on student interest as well as the needs of our community. We've been working closely with Fort Collins High for the last couple of weeks. I've been spending some time over there looking at exactly what the timing will be of the courses morning and afternoon. It's our goal that we're able to give students at least the credit that they would be missing by coming to the Futures Lab. So a year-long course at the Futures Lab would be at least 10 credits for those students. And we've been able to land on some times that we think we'll be able to accomplish that for students coming from all of the high schools. So they won't lose credit, they won't end up behind, they'll still be on track to graduate, so they'll be able to earn credit. And as Scott said, the goal eventually is to be able to provide opportunities for all grade levels during times that maybe the facility is not in use by high school students. So the opportunity to have middle school students engage in programs over the summer, the opportunity to bring elementary school students over just to experience the things that we have there for them, and to give them the opportunity to see themselves in that facility so that it's something that they can aspire to or they can get connected to when they become high school students. And now we have the discussion slide.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I just got whispered in my ear that this is something that our superintendent considers about as exciting as anything she's done in the recent past. So worth mentioning an editorial to the board. Thank you for that introduction. Board members, what questions or comments do you have? Naomi.
You talked a little bit about how you're hoping to have about 100 students involved next year before you're at a permanent space, and then up to 400. So my question is, how do numbers affect the use of the permanent space, and how are you gauging those numbers, 100 next year, 400 the year after that?
So we've got 5 programs lined up next year, so if we can target about 20 kids per program, that would be a win, I think, just to be able to have an opportunity to put our system through some changes, including transporting kids back and forth between sites during the school day. So that's just kind of a nice number that we landed on with the 5 programs, as well as taking into account the space that Fort Collins is able to provide us with. Up to 400 in the first year would be kind of a stretch goal in the new facility, but just doing some back-of-the-napkin math, looking at how many lab spaces we could divide the building into, I think we've come up with it. It could be potential that we have 300-ish students on campus at any one time, and if you consider 4 time slots, we hope to be able to serve 800, 1,000 students total, not at any one time in the facility, but in the course of a year to be able to focus on at least 800, 1,000 students.
One of the things I'd add to that is, as we look at the space right now, we're looking at an alternate day schedule. So students that would be accessing the facility would, in year one, would be going on a Tuesday, Thursday, or a Wednesday, Friday. And so when you move into your own facility, and if you think about a Tuesday, Thursday, AM, PM slot, a Wednesday, Friday, AM, PM slot, you kind of got 4 different slots that are built around the school day. And so that's where, for us, if we're able to pull off 100 or so next year, we would say that in that model with 4 slots, the facility during the school day could hold up to about 800 students in those, if you had all 4 sections running with around 200 students at any one time. That doesn't include opportunities we might be able to do on weekends or evenings. Those will be programs you'd have to build out. But we're thinking 400 feels about halfway full and gives us a chance to scale. And again, as Dr. Elias said, that's a stretch goal. And when you look at year one in the permanent facility, some of that depends on build out, some of it depends on the support we have to move students through it, and quite frankly, some of it depends on how successful we are in Fort Collins in year one. We need to be methodical as we do this. We need to make sure we're doing it well, but we also want to make sure we're meeting the needs and trying to give kids options, and we have students right now that are looking for these kind of options.
So then you said that it would be a Tuesday, Thursday, or a Wednesday, Friday, and then that would work with each individual high school that the students would be able to miss 2 mornings a week based on being involved in this program.
And the way it sets up right now is it works with each high school just a little bit differently. Rocky Mountain High School has its block that they meet every single day. So a student from Rocky Mountain High School likely would come for every other day and then miss the every other day back at Rocky, or they could come join us both blocks, which many of them may choose to do. That may be something we see from multiple high schools. A high school like Poudre or Fossil, an every other day schedule means they could take the classes on their high school site every other day. So it depends a little bit on the schedule that each high school has. And we've made the decision, at least early on in this process, that we are going to continue to work with the schedules the high schools have, where we've seen, as we've been out to look at many different districts doing this, some that have done what we're attempting to do, and others that have made an edict that all high school schedules will be the same. That's a tough sell in PSD, where schedules are pretty important to the schools. So we want to try to create a system that will work with and around what's already in place, and that's what we're going to attempt to do, and we'll learn a lot in year one.
Carolyn.
So I agree with Sandra that this is probably one of the most exciting things this board and the superintendent has ever undertaken, and I'm really excited about it. I'm excited about the connection we have to the business community while we're doing this to fill in some of those holes for them. But I am also thinking about connecting kids to their interests. And I know that when we look at the connection survey, even though we have really good numbers across the survey, that is one of the things we're a little bit lower on, and kids don't feel connected to their interest. So have you or do you intend to talk to children about, or our students about, what they would like to see? What would connect them to our Futures Lab?
I think that's critical. And Carolyn, since I've come into this position, I've heard you over and over and over talk about interest and passion. We think that's critically important. And I will tell you that to this point, career cruising has helped us, right? All our students, 6 through 12, are doing some inventories that talk about their interest and give them some suggestions based on their interest. And that's being utilized more right now than it was last year as year one. This year in year two, and what we've been able to do, that gives us feedback around what our students are asking for. So that is a piece of what we're looking at in terms of programming, but also looking at the needs of the community, right? There's the other side of that, and that is, what's the need in our community around the employers, and what are their needs, and then how do we match those up? Are we able to offer things we don't currently offer? That's a need for us, right, is how do we expand the offerings that we right now don't meet that need at all, either for the students or our employers. but also the opportunity, and we believe that the options in K-8 to let students see what's available may also have a chance for us to talk interests earlier, and maybe for them to see something that they are interested in far earlier than they do now. One of the big shifts, I think, that will be part of this process is we've been talking, not just in PSD, but in K-12 in general, that it's K-12 and then it's four-year college. And we have to help our community recognize there are lots of options when you leave PSD, and our job is to prepare you for all of those options. And we think this is a different pathway. It allows us to talk to the students about all the pathways you might have, but do it through the kind of interest-based programming. And so we're excited about the options in front of us.
Kristen, DJ.
So I think one of the things I'm really excited about with this project here is the fact that it's separate building. I actually went to what we used to call a VOTEC high school. And even though you were always in the same building, kids got separated. What I love about this idea is that the kids will be able to go on a Monday, Wednesday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, but they'll still always be a Lobo or always be an Impala or, their home school. So they'll always be able to come back and still be at your school. So, and I'm hoping this excites you. I'm looking at the students out in the audience. So I'm hoping it excites you the way that it does me, because I think that will still allow to have the high school experience, as exciting or dreaded as that might be, but it'll allow you to have that as well as having this kind of an experience as well. And so, and I don't know if, having that separate buildings, I wonder if some people who are just seeing this maybe for the first time, but they're thinking, why do we need a separate building for this? But I think it's important to have all the various high schools coming into this one building and working together, and then they can go back to being their individual high schools again. So thank you for all your work on this. I think I don't really have a question about that. I just wanted to say that. So thank you.
Okay, DJ.
So I'm kind of wondering, it's kind of a love fest here. I feel like I'm bringing a downer now, but because I'm going to ask about money. So how much money is it going to take to renovate it, do you foresee? And the idea of ongoing, paying for it ongoing is a concern of mine too. So,
well, a couple things. First of all, the 6.4 is what we're buying the building for, and we think we've had some preliminary estimates around $5 million to renovate it. It could be 5, 6, 7 million once we have an architect come in and figure out how to do it right. A couple things I would say to keeping it current, right? As we move forward and think about the programming we need to help our students be prepared, we're headed into an environment where we would need to do that in 6 locations. So by bringing on one site, and as Kristen talked about, having a space where we can do that once, we can find one certified teacher that can teach it, we can make sure the equipment is current in one spot, not 6. Economically, that's a whole lot more sustainable than trying to do it 6 times. So that's one. Having the ability right now to have some money on hand to do, it's a bold project. It's something we've not done before in PSD. But as you look around the state of Colorado, the nation, lots of places are going this direction because of the economics of it. The other thing that we've heard over and over and over again, from St. Vrain, where we've visited multiple times, to a StratOps session we did last week where we had 7 different business members in our community, is our community can get behind a space like this easier than it can get behind any one of our high schools. Because when they take on a high school, they feel like they're not taking on all of the high schools, and so that's a hard way to partner with the district. Their energy around partnering with a district facility is much more tangible than it's been, as I saw it as a principal, and they're telling us that time and time again. The trades are excited because there will be focused energy. There will be like-minded students that are accessing the facility, so there's lots of positives to that. So I'll give you an example we heard in St. Vrain that they didn't think about, but their superintendent encouraged us to make sure we do, is that once they built the facility, the number of business partners that came forward, I think that he told us they've got 94 partners. They've been open since end of August, early September. Many of them are bringing large chunks of money forward. Many of them are partnering in annual partners with the community or with the program. So that helps with the sustainability as well. The other thing I think that's important is that there are funding mechanisms for career and tech education out of the state, and some of that money is refundable in every CTE venture we have currently. So we're seeing some of that right now. A separate facility brings in an extra 16% of money that you spend. So there's almost 40% of the money that we spend in a facility like this. If the teachers are certified and reimbursable, and the technology or supplies you put in it are, then you get almost 40% of that reimbursed to the district to try to encourage this idea of career and tech ed growth across the state. So that's another rationale for going down this separate facility. But I think the biggest one is what Kristen talked about, is that we have the ability to bring those like-minded peers together, do it one time. You have students who are Impalas who are able to get together with Lobos and Sabercats around an interest, and then go back to where they are going to school and where they'll graduate from and still have that identity. And that's important. When we initially talked about this conversation, we were looking at specializing in each of our high schools. And had we done that, it would have meant the Impalas would have had to go to Sabercat land to take some classes, and Sabercats would have had to go to Lobo land to do some other, and that would have been hard, and you would have asked students to change identity. Right now we don't have to do that at all, because this will be all of ours. It'll be everyone's. It's a facility that is accessible to all, even though all students won't utilize it. It's built for everybody.
Go ahead, DJ.
One of my other concerns is, are we going to offend one of our good partners, the Front Range Community College, by kind of going with some of what they're doing, it sounds like?
So we've had conversations with Front Range. The one right now that we may replicate, it would be Culinary Arts, and they would move their program to our facility. I mean, their program right now is in our facility. It's at Fossil Ridge. If we did it as a partner with them, and we'd have to look at that. We'd have to look at space, and do we have the right space to do a culinary art program that actually extends what we're already doing? But they were excited about that. We're not looking at replicating automotive. We're not looking right now at replicating a welding program. They have those programs. But I will say we have to be economically sound, and we'll learn how much does it cost us to run programs like this, and can we be more competitive than the partnership we have with them, and that will help us to ask the right questions. Thompson's doing the exact same thing. Thompson's working on a program just like this with one of their elementary schools, and asking the same questions about the partner with Front Range. We don't have any intentions of not partnering with Front Range. We would like to see that every class that we offer through the Futures Lab is available for concurrent enrollment. But I would also say we'd like to broaden the conversation that they're not all Front Range classes. We're working with Embry-Riddle right now around the aviation pathway. They're interested in concurrent enrollment with us. The entrepreneur pathway likely could be a CSU concurrent enrollment class. I think that's positive for us to broaden how that works. We've talked to Front Range very clearly about what we're talking, and they've told us the ones they'd partner with us and the ones they can't.
Okay, Nate?
Yes, I'll be advocating to perhaps name this the Poudre School District VOTech Futures Lab, so that we can get that back into the conversation instead of this CTE. I support this.
CTE comes with funding. Does that help you?
Okay. I support this, and I think it's exciting. I also want to say, though, even though I think this is a good investment, I think it it bears mentioning that this is a choice that we're making to invest in the Futures Lab and both the acquisition and the development of it. And that's a choice that's something other than putting the interest and most or all the premium into maintenance of existing schools. So I still support it, but we need to realize that that's a choice we're making. So
There's no question.
yep. And I also wanted to ask if you could talk a little bit about the right of first offer that's in the contract and the additional provisions, paragraph 30I.
Brendan, you want to talk about that?
It's 3 years.
Good evening. My name is Brendan Willits. I'm the planning manager with operations for the school district. So would you just like me to provide an overview?
Well, just as we plan for the future and the hoped for expansion, I just wanted to point out that that we have that, and I appreciate that we were able to negotiate 3-year offer. And if you can just explain what it is.
Absolutely. So the location 4862 is one building and a campus, and there are 3 buildings on that campus. So it's right off of Innovation Drive. We originally looked at the possibility of acquiring all 3 sites for various uses. We did settle upon one site, 4862. However, we wanted to leave the district the option in the future to acquire the other 2 buildings if they were to come available, and if district administration and leadership were to want to pursue that path. So as part of the negotiated contract, we have 3 years from, if this contract is signed, 3 years from the date when we close, that would be basically a first right of refusal. If those other 2 buildings were to go up for sale, Poudre School District would be provided 30 days to decide whether Poudre School District wanted to proceed in the possible acquisition of one or both of those other buildings. It's really just leaving us an option for the future. If we were to want to expand and those buildings were to come up for sale, we could leverage that decision as leadership and the Board of Education were to decide that. So it's really providing us flexibility and options in the future to gain additional buildings that are currently surrounding our building, to make more of a southern campus if that were to be in the future. There's nothing to stop us from acquiring those buildings after the 3 years. If they were to go on public market, we obviously could go and pursue those as a public entity, as any other entity could pursue them. But this gives us 3 years to get a first crack at it if they go on the market.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, Rob.
So I have a couple questions/comments. I'm very supportive of this and excited about the idea as well. I think we need to continue to share this in as many education or as many channels with our community as possible, because I have heard some folks say, oh my gosh, you know, why aren't we spending this money on something else? What is this thing going to really do for us, et cetera, et cetera. So there's an educational component, I think, that's really critical that we continue with this, because we don't want to lose the public on this or get into some kind of unhappiness about this versus the other things we could be doing with the money. So I think this is an important, so anyway, this is a really important opportunity for our students, and we need to make sure that our community understands that and understands how we're financing it and how we're not financing it. So that's one thing. Speaking of the community, you talked about possibly students being able to use this after school or whatever, maybe during the summer, I don't know. Has there been thought about the community access to this facility or any of these programs, and what would that look like?
There has been talk, and Scott, maybe you'll add to what I'm going to say. There certainly has been talk, and I think one of the positives, and we, on our visits, we had some of the locations we visited who ran after-school adult programming for a cost. So it becomes a revenue driver for the district to offer some of the programming outside the school day to adults, an adult retraining program kind of deal. So that's a possibility. I think for us, one of the things we talked about in our strategy session last week is making sure we focus on our strategy early, and then how do we expand the strategy as we get it up and running. But certainly, looking at adult training, we've heard from the city, there's a great deal of interest in the city helping with some access for that kind of programming. And then you also can talk about evening stuff for our own students, and how does that pertain to graduation rates and the work they can do to accumulate credits in a different schedule than they currently do. So that's another example of conversations we're having, in addition to, as I said earlier, bringing K-8 students in for different kinds of experiences for our students and our staff, because our staff would get to see potentially how they could teach differently as well. So there's possibilities of using that building for the gamut.
Okay. Has there been discussion of whether homeschool students or district charter school students will have access to this facility? I mean, I know we're not providing them transportation, but if they were to say, hey, we're interested in this, can they sign up, or what's the deal with that?
I think if we have space, they likely would have access to that. And we'd have to talk about, what the fees and costs would be.
Well, that's why
for them to do that. Right now, as we set up we haven't even gotten specific enough to know what our own costs would be for our own students. We've got to figure out the cost of the programs and what the fees might be for our own students, and then think about what that would be for the district charters.
Of course. And one other question, then I'll yield the floor, I guess. And that is, you talked about them being able to earn credits at these activities. Do you anticipate that at least some of the activities they'll be able to earn credits in core subjects, or will it be primarily elective credits that they'll be able to earn?
I would say our desire is, just like it is in our CTE courses in our current schools, that we will be looking for ways for them to earn core content credit in the facility, not just elective credit.
That's terrific. And one other thing, we keep talking about this in the context of CTE and maybe VOTAC, and those are all important elements of this, and it's broader. I'm hoping, and certainly we've been talking about it being broader than a traditional VOTAC thing. We don't want to have the separation, and the programs you're talking about looks like they would perhaps be interest for all kinds of students, some who are going to college, some who are going to trade, some who are going to the military, whatever. I just want to make sure that we continue to talk about this in a way that all students can see themselves, who have interest in these areas, can see themselves as participating, and not just kids who are like not going to college or whatever. So
yeah, I guess for me, what's been interesting through the process, right, is career in tech ed, I think, takes on maybe a narrow connotation for some. When I think about what we're intending to do, we're intending to get students ready for life after PSD, and that's going to include career. And so that's a piece of what they're going to be doing, right? But you're right, Rob. The idea is this will be for students that aren't sure they're going to college, for students that believe they're going to go to the military or right into a job, or they're planning on going to four-year college. All of those students should see themselves being able to access this facility. That'll be critical as we continue to work with the community, that it truly is a facility that all those groups of individuals can see themselves in. And that may have been one of the challenges, at least in the facility in my hometown, was that it wasn't necessarily thought of like that. But the courses you saw offered and the way our society is right now, there's a lot of courses we can have that a student can access, and it can give them a certification, they can go get a job, and it can be a springboard to a four-year university and anything in between. And so that's a pretty exciting time that we're doing something like this.
Okay, and I'll throw in one quick question, and then maybe ask that we wrap up unless there are some more important questions to help make decision here. Just quickly, I think it was Nate mentioned that it is an investment we're making to the tune of $6 million tonight and some more down the road. And just to be clear, is this a valuable piece of property? that we would be expecting we could sell if we ever had to? Is it in a good part of town? Is it in a high demand area?
We certainly believe it is.
That answers my question. Thank you. Board members, are there any final questions before you make your decision? I have one from DJ.
St. Vrain, you said, has started. How many students do they have doing it right now?
Can't remember how many students they had in it right now, but again, they're doing it. They're starting small and working their way up. They have a little different model than we have in that they're running shuttles for each period. So they're running shuttles back and forth across St. Vrain, which they're a smaller geographical district, but they're not small. So they're working on that. They also have had a school in addition, much like what we offer at Front Range, that's been up and running in St. Vrain for, I think, a lot of years, 10 or more years, that they've had that facility up and running. So what they've offered now is what they call an innovation center, and it really is focused on the high tech, because they've already got their VOTEC center, if you will. For us, we're looking at incorporating all of those into one space.
And how long of a day would it be for the student?
Right now, if they came for a course, it'd be about 2 hours, twice a week.
Okay.
Okay. Good. All right. I'll call for a roll call, please.